welcome everyone to this new session. I'm glad to have you back here. In our last video, we talked about loading data from Redshift into Power BI, right? And if you remember, we load multiple months and now we have 99 rows, right? So today we want to focus on showcasing our work, right? We need to be able to demonstrate the value of all the hard work that we have done in terms of the ETL and building a data platform that is really scalable and future proof. All right, so now with this dashboard design, we're gonna just quickly go back to what we in terms of our business requirement, right? So remember in our business requirement, we've seen this wireframe before. And this is what we're going to be focusing on, right? Now, before that, for some of you that might be new to Power BI, I've tried to simplify this Power BI dashboard design into 4 different steps. All right, so the first part is going to be ingest, the second will be transform, the third will be design, and the last phase of it will be publish, and then the stakeholder consume the report for informed decision making. Now, ingest is really when we load the data from any source, in this case is Redshift specifically, into Power BI. That's the first part of it. That's how I want you guys to really think about this. And the second phase of it, and also in terms of ingest, you also want to make sure that your data is properly cleansed in such a way that it will be properly interpreted by the computer. And I'm going to show you that briefly in this particular video. The next phase is a transform. For this transform, I just want you to focus at this point. I'm not going to touch on modeling, but I want you to focus at this point on calculated columns and measures. All right, and the design part is really when we start really building that beautiful dashboard that we're seeing in the wireframe. And the last part of it is publishing that into a platform that the stakeholders can then be able to consume and use it for business needs as needed. All right. Now, let's quickly go back to this wireframe. Now, in this video, we're going to be focusing on that ingest, cleansing, as well as transformation. Now, when it comes to transformation, think of measures and calculated columns. I know for some of you, you might be new to Power BI. For some of you, you might just be starting with Power BI. So some of you might be advanced. But regardless of the situation, there is still something to learn here. One key thing I want to point out when you think of transform is measures and calculated columns. Now, there are diverse difference between both of them, but the key one I want to emphasize is that when you think of measures, think of aggregated values. So things like KPIs and metrics. So then at that point, I need to use measures. Now, when you think of calculated column, basically calculated columns are used to slice and dice the data. Think of dimension tables, right? Anytime you think of, is this going to be a dimension table? Am I using this to just be able to describe my data? If that is the case, then think of calculated columns. Now, in a very simple term, calculated columns is really they are columns we build in Power BI because they are not we don't have those columns in the table in the data we ingested into Power BI. So they're basically derived columns, right? Now, for this particular design, we do have 4 measures and 4 calculated columns. You might be wondering, how do I know? First of all, I have worked on this data, and second of all, even if I haven't, by experience, I can quickly identify what should be measures and what should be calculated columns. Now, how do you identify that? First of all, if you look at this one, you can see we have total revenue. That's what we have first measure, because you can see its metric is KPI. Trip count, that will be our second measure, right? Average fare, that will be our third measure, and then count if any days, that will be our fourth measure. Now, the next question will be, would I really have any additional measures I need to create? I need to be able to create or use within these visuals. Then we quickly take a look at it. If you look at this one, daily total revenue trips, oh, we already have it here, so we can reuse it. Total trips we already have here, which is trip count, we can reuse it. Total trips as well. All of these are dimension in nature. We already, some of this we have before, some of we don't. That's what we talk about calculate columns. But now just focusing on the metrics. Total trips we do have, total trips we do have. So then we cover all the measures. So really just keep in mind we have 4 measures, and for the calculated columns, right? So if you can quickly take a look at your dashboard, what is it that I have in that table that I don't really have in this dashboard that I need to create? If you look at this month, you can see in the data we really have date. We don't really have month, right? So we need to create that month. Now, from experience, you will know that when you create the month, it will be ordered by in alphabetical manner, because there is no way for the computer to know this is month, right? So one way to be able to order it properly from January to December is so that you create month numbers. So for that purpose, we're going to create 2 calculated columns for this particular field. And then for this one, we do have some categorization of dry and rainy, but they are not just in dry and rainy, right? They are just, we have dry or no rain, we have moderate rain, and all different types of rain category. So we need to be able to create another column that can give us dry and rainy column. So basically dry and rainy values. So basically we need to create that as well. And so this one we do have, so we don't need to create. So we already identify 4 or 3 different calculated columns. There is one more, day of week. If you look at it, we also just have date, we don't have day of week. So we need to create that so that we can be able to use it within our design, right? So with that being said, all right, so let's quickly go back to our Power BI, and then let's quickly start creating those calculated columns and measures. Now, before we do that, I do mention that I want to go over making sure that your ingestion is done properly. Now, the last time we just ingest and load, but one thing you want to double check is that there are a few checks you have to perform here just to make sure that you understand your data and data is represented correctly, because you want to make sure that the quality of your data is good. So one of the major things to check for is the data type. Why? Because the data type is the way for the computer to interpret your data accurately. If you define as date, the computer, your processor will take it as date, right? If you define it as number, your processor will take it as number. Then it knows 1 plus 1 should be 2, right? So you need to define your data type, and there are a few other things you need to check here as well. But again, it's a crash course. But at the very least, we need to go over the data type. So we're gonna quickly do that. Dates looks good. Trip count looks good. The average fare looks good. It's in decimal. Total revenue is in decimal. Temperature max is in decimal. That looks good. Temperature minimum temperature is in decimal. That's great. Precipitation is in millimeter. That's great. It's in decimal as well. Great. And this is spring. This is great, right? So there is no more changes we need to make. If there is not what we expect, we need to make some changes here. Okay. Also, one of the things you want to do here is also to just take a look at your data, right? And you can see some metric. If you really want to see some metric, you can see 8 columns, 99 rows, and then you can profile your data as well. But we won't do all of that because this is not really full-fledged Power BI design, but it's a good start. Okay, let's click close and apply. Now that we know our data is represented properly, now let's go ahead and quickly create those calculated columns. Now I'm just going to click here one of this column, and then you can see it takes me to this column tools, and then I'll click on new column. All right, so the first one we're going to deal with is month, and then we're going to use one particular function that we're going to have to use multiple times, which is format. And I'm going to show you what the format does, but essentially format is really good to be able to, especially for time series column. you can easily extract multiple things out of this, out of a date or a timestamp. All right, so for this purpose, we have date, we just want the month. So I'm going to use 3 M's, right? And one question that might come to mind is, how will I know this is 3 M's? I'm going to share the documentation. And I want to encourage you to start getting used to, just going through the documentation. So if the provider of this tool and is Microsoft, you want to go to Microsoft and check some of their documentation, some of their functions. So for this format function, you can basically look at it. If this is the documentation of Microsoft, and you can see it says that, and this is DAX, obviously, DAX formula. So you see format, value, format string, and local name. So essentially, that's really what it is. But what I want to show you is just to tell you what each of these letters represent. See, the 3 M's represent abbreviated months in 3 letters, right? January to December. While 4 M's, implies the entire month without any abbreviation. And then you can see days as well, you can see weeks as well, and it goes on and on. So feel free to explore this documentation for some other so that you get used to it in case you need to use it for other work at your organization. All right, enough of that. So we're gonna just basically use this to create multiple a calculated column. So we created 1. So remember, we need 4. So the next one is going to be month number, and then month number is going to be, it's just going to be 2 M's, okay? And we're just going to have 2 M's. Is that beautiful? That's looking great. And the last one here is just the day of the week. We're just going to call it day of week. And then we're just gonna use 4Ds. And if you go to that documentation, you will see exactly what we're doing here right now. Okay, so that's great. And the last one is this rainfall category. Remember, we just need dry or rainy. And then look at what we have here. So we need to create the calculated column. Okay, so for that we call it is rainy. Is rainy equals 2, and then we do switch. Okay, we call it true, and then we just so basically there are a few things you need to take note as you write these calculated columns. First of all, you need to take care of blank, right? And also you need to just take care of dry or no rain, and every other thing is going to be rainy. So we're just going to say it's blank. All right, and then we're going to say rainfall category. Basically the default is true, so you can say it's blank. If you say it's blank and put the column in bracket like this, it's just going to mean that if it's true. If actually it's blank, then you just return blank as well. That's exactly what I want. And then I will just say rainfall equals to dry / no rain, and then we have dry. All right, comma, otherwise it should just return rainy. All right, and then that's it. Okay, so you can see it's looking good. Blank is been taken care of, everything dry. We can actually filter to test, and you can see it's looking great. It's exactly what we want. Clear all filters. Perfect. So we created our 4 calculated column, which is great, and then we're just going to move ahead and create our measures. Now we could create our measures among all these columns as well, but for best practices we like to create a new table and then put all the measures in the new table. Okay, so let's quickly do that. So we click on enter data, and then we call these all measures for New York City, and then you click on load. right? All right, so click on load, and then we can go ahead and create our 4 measures. We'll start with total revenue equals to, we're just going to use a regular sum. There are a few nuances to sum, but for now we'll leave it at this. So we just have that total revenue, and so once you have one measure, you can basically just delete this column that we don't really need, and then we just create the other one. So the next one we're going to create is total trip count, and we're just going to call it total sum, and then we call it trip count. Beautiful. And then we also then create new measure, and then this one will call total number of days, and then we're just gonna do count rows. Remember, every record shows 1 day, right? So 1 day equals to 1 record. So when we count each row, we're basically counting each record. So, and then we're counting each day essentially. So we're just gonna say for the table, count each row for us, which will be number of days, right? So that's great. And then the last but not the least, we're gonna create the average. Okay, average fare, and then we're gonna just call average. Again, there are nuances to average as well, but we won't dive into all of that. That will be outside the scope of this video. So all of that is good. So let's just quickly see what our values look like, especially for the measures, and then we can close this session. So I just select this card, and I'm going to dump all the measures, total revenue, total trip count, average fares, and then total number of days, right? And then you can see we already have this. We're just going to go to the formatting and format it a little bit differently, and then we increase this number of rows to 4, and look at it, it's already looking great. And then we're just gonna centralize it, right? All right, so we'll select this callout value, centralize, which is great. All right, now let's just let's bring in a filter so that way we can actually just test that it's working as expected. So I just selected this slicer, and then I'm gonna drop it's raining here, and then I'm just gonna select dry, rainy. Beautiful, guys, it's coming as expected. All right, so this is a good place to stop. Recap of what we've done. We look at the processes we need to go through for this build or this design, ingest, transform, design, and then publish, right? And then we looked at ingest, what we really need to take note of in ingest, and also we also took a look at the difference between measures and calculate columns. We created our measures, calculate columns, and then we tested it, and everything is looking great. In our next video, we're going to be focusing on this actual design. Now that we have all the fields, all the attributes that we need, the columns, and also we have the measures, let's get the design going, right? So with that, I will say thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next session where we'll be focusing on the actual design. Okay, see you then.